In today's session, we are going to study about root, its types and functions. So first of all, what is a root? If we look at a plant which is growing on a soil, then the plant has got two parts, one which is above the soil and one which is below the soil. The part which is above the soil has leaves and flowers and fruits, and this part which is above the soil is called shoot or the shoot system, and the part which is below the soil is called the root system or the root. So we can say that the underground part of the plant is a root. I hope it's clear. Now let us move on to the types. Before moving on to the types of root, let us see from which part of the embryo the root develops from. So if you remember the structure of an embryo, if we talk about a dicot embryo, then it has got an embryonal axis and two cotyledons. These are the two cotyledons, and this is the embryonal axis. So the upper part of the axis is called the plumule, which develops into the shoot, while the lower part of the embryo is called the radicle, which develops into the root. So the root develops from the radicle of the embryo. Okay, now let us move on to the types of root or types of root system. So if we talk about types of root, then basically there are three types of root system. First one is the taproot system. Second one is the fibrous root system. Third one is the adventitious root system. So we will look at each of these types of roots in a bit of detail with examples. So let us go through the taproot system. Now taproot is basically seen in dicots. An example given in NCERT is mustard. Mustard is a dicot. So in dicots taproot is found. Now what is taproot? If this is the soil, then the taproot is a very long root. Inside the soil, the radicle grows very long deep into the soil and forms a main root, which is called a taproot. It is also called a primary root. There is one main primary root which is very long deep into the soil, and from this main root several other roots arise. These are called lateral roots. So these lateral roots can be of different order, like the ones coming out of the main or primary root are called secondary roots. Then these secondary roots can have further smaller roots coming out of them. These will be called tertiary roots. So in this way, different orders of lateral roots come out of the primary root. So this kind of root system is called a taproot system. In taproot system, there is one long root which goes deep into the soil, and which is called the main or the primary root, and then it bears different kind of tertiary roots. So example is mustard. Taproot is basically found in all the dicots. Then the second type of root is the fibrous root. In what happens in the fibrous root is that if this is the soil, this is the stem of the plant, then when the main root forms, it dies after some time. The main root dies. The main root is short-lived. And what happens when it dies? A large number of smaller roots arise from the base of the stem. And these roots are very fibrous. If you look at it, it looks like this. So if this is the stem, this is the base of the stem, this is the base of the stem, and from the base of the stem, a large number of different roots arise. So this kind of root is called fibrous root. As you can see, it looks fibrous. That's why it has the name fibrous root. An example given is wheat. Now wheat is a monocot. So most of the monocots have either fibrous or adventitious root. I hope the fibrous root is clear. When the main root dies after a short time, the other roots, a large number of smaller roots, take its place and form fibrous root. Example is wheat. Now let us move on to the last type, which is the adventitious root. Adventitious root is any root which is formed from any part of the plant other than the radical. Any part other than the radical. So as we just talked earlier, that the root forms from the radical of the embryo. So if in any plant the root is developing from parts other than the radical, like for example, if it is developing from stem, then that kind of root will be called an adventitious root. The part can be any part, but not the radical. Okay, so the examples given are banyan, monstera, and grass. So you must have seen grass in the garden or on the fields. So the grasses are like this, and they have their stems near the soil, and from their stems these small root-like structures come out. These are the grasses. And they have these small root-like structures. These roots are not formed from the radical, rather they are formed from their stem, which lies close to the soil. If you dig out a patch of grass, you will see these roots. So these kind of roots are called adventitious roots. I hope the adventitious root is clear. So we can conclude that in dicots such as mustard, tap root system is found. Whereas in monocots, the root can be either fibrous or adventitious root. An example of a plant having fibrous root is wheat, and examples of plants having adventitious roots are banyan, grass, and monstera. I hope the root and its types are clear to you. Now let us look at some of the functions of roots. So the primary function we all know is the absorption of water and minerals from the soil. With the help of roots, the plants absorb water and mineral from the soil. The second function is the roots provide anchorage to the plant. Because the roots are dig deep into the soil, or they are holding the soil surface, so it kinds of provide a support to the plant, an anchorage. Then besides that, the roots, some of the roots also store reserve food materials. So storage of reserve food material. And one more function is production of plant growth regulators. Plant growth regulators, or plant hormones we can also call it, are also produced in the root. So these are some of the functions of the root. So I hope today's session is clear and you get to know about the roots, its types and functions. Thank you so much.